proud to be here on behalf of Albertans to join with my colleagues from across the country to call for fiscal fairness in the Federation. Fiscal fairness on health care. Provincial taxpayers are carrying nearly 80% of the burden in a system that becomes more costly as our population ages. And that is more clear now than ever in the midst of the worst public health crisis in a century. We all say during COVID that we need to be all in this together. And while we do appreciate many of the recent actions of the Government of Canada, fundamentally, as my colleagues have pointed out, our ability at the provincial level to pay for the quality of care that people rightfully need and expect is increasingly limited in a bargain that was supposed to be a 50-50 federal-provincial share of health care costs when Medicare was formalized as a national priority 5 decades ago. And so I'm here to join my colleagues in making that very clear, united call on behalf of Canadians. This shouldn't be seen as a federal-provincial dispute, squabbling between governments. Not about politics, it's about people. And this is more desperate in Alberta than perhaps anywhere else, given the fiscal calamity that we are facing after 5 years of economic decline and stagnation, on top of which we are now experiencing both the biggest contraction in the global economy since the 1930s and the largest decline in energy prices in history, which has resulted in a great fiscal reckoning in our province. We just reported 2 weeks ago a $24 billion deficit, the largest per capita in Canada. And we are joined by Newfoundland and Labrador and Saskatchewan and other resource-producing provinces in facing a real crisis. And that is also why I am so grateful to my 12 colleagues from the provinces and territories across partisan and geographic lines for having stood with us and the people of Canada's resource-producing regions in calling for fiscal fairness. Fiscal stabilization was created decades ago so that basically when provinces see a sudden economic collapse, the federal government will be there to soften the blow. I call it a kind of reverse equalization. Equalization is where provinces with higher incomes effectively share their wealth with other provinces. And for Alberta, that's meant basically 50 years of nonstop big contributions to the rest of the Federation. And we don't begrudge that. We're proud to have done it. We're proud to have played a country-building role, about $630 billion net contribution through equalization and other fiscal transfers. But now is our time of great need. We have seen our economy and our fiscal resources have just fallen off a cliff. 5 years of economic stagnation, plus the biggest decline in oil and gas prices in history, hitting us all at once. And so fiscal stabilization is supposed to be there for us. But about 20 years back, the federal government put a cap on it, $60 a person, which effectively means that under the program, we should be receiving, as a province, this year, for example, this year should be receiving $3.8 billion, and instead will receive $266 million. Over the last 5 years, we should have received $2.9 billion from fiscal stabilization. Instead, we received half a billion. So we've been shortchanged by about $6 billion. And look, I know that's just, it sounds like I just gave an accounting lesson here. The bottom line is we've got the second highest unemployment in Canada. We have an addictions crisis. We have a mental health crisis. We have a jobs crisis in a province that has been a magnet for people from across the country who came there from poverty and unemployment to opportunity and paid big into the rest of the country. And all we're asking for is that that be recognized in the way the system was supposed to be designed. And for a time like this, more than ever. So really, I call it a kind of reverse equalization and it's there to soften the blow. We've made a kind of modified ask of the federal government based on to get a consensus across the country, which would change the technical parameters of the program so every province would receive something, additional support for healthcare and other key services through fiscal stabilization.